All right, well, welcome to another Chi Fit weekend. Hello, everybody. And those of you that don't know me, I'm Michael Leone, one of the teachers here in Zen Wellness, a master instructor. And I am going to attempt the impossible, and that is put this whole paradigm in one fluid talk. All right? And it all begins with what we call a journey around the sun. And when we look at a journey around the sun, we're talking about time, of course. And what we do, according to more of a Taoist perspective, a traditional Chinese medicine view, we look at it from 3 points primarily, which is your overall lifespan. So we're designed to go maybe 108 to 120 years, optimally, right? And so that's the whole first big gear. If you want to look at this like gears and a clock, we've got like 3 major gears. That's the big gear. And then the middle gear would be the season, which is literally the season. Is it spring or is it summer? And then the smallest gear is the hour. Those 3 times, if you will, have a huge effect on our mind, our body, and our energy. Jing, Qi, and Shan. That's what we call it. Jing, Qi, and Shan. Or that's what it's called. And so not knowing that creates a tremendous amount of suffering. Now, I started this about 40 years ago, and this was not my orientation lecture. This isn't what my grandmaster taught me. It wasn't like this at all. I learned this in retrospect. It took about 19 years to catch on to what was happening. And as basically a child, when you're 16 or so, you're basically a child. There was really no need to explain the mechanics because I was in, unknowingly, what they call the fire period of my life. So from 8 to 33, that's pretty much fire. And it's not a great time to sit down and explain things to people. It's a great time to consume the fire. And that is just shut up, keep moving. Listen to me now, we'll talk about it later, do it now. And so the way I was taught was based on, again, another rule of 3 applied, Jing, Qi, and Shan. Again, but Jing in this case applies to warrior. Then it goes into what they call scholar, and then it goes into what they call sage. It's an evolution. And so my grandmaster, coming out of a Donghan Taoist clan, knew best not to sit down and explain to me the scholarly aspects or even any of the principles of the sage. At that point, it was all warrior. It was about discipline, self-respect, martial arts, doing stuff, kicks, and holding postures very long on top of little plum flower posts, and all kinds of physical abuse necessary to basically harness the excess fire. Because this is a key time in your life. That fire, like your fire in your kitchen, it can actually nourish you, make a wonderful meal, or burn your whole house down. And extreme fire, unfortunately, does express itself. I think the best example is Jim Morrison, things like that. What did he die at, 28? That's like the key piece. A lot of high energy people die. Jim Belushi, 33. I mean, it's not a joke. Start looking at it. If you go extreme into fire at that phase where everything is possible, all your potential is bounding, you could burn yourself out or blow yourself out. And a lot of people don't realize that this fire could burn your house down or cook your meal. They just run with fire. And then they spend the rest of their life, how short it might be, suffering from all the deficits brought on by literally burning yourself out. Remember the saying in the 70s, he's a burnout? Well, that's probably what they meant by that. We just intuitively knew this. So the concept of, okay, this is a fire period, just move. So we held postures for extended periods of time. We did all the stuff, just go. And we did it. And the objective there was to take that fire and forge. Because fire can be used, of course, to accelerate the movement, of anything. Heat and compression, or heat and pressure, is how we transform things. So the warrior phase is setting your body. My grandmaster used to say, and what he would like to do is stand on you. Like when you're in this posture, he'd stand on your thighs from behind and put his shoulders on your, his arms on your shoulders, and just talk to you and say, listen, you're taking a pill for a disease you won't get when you're 50. You're going through this now, so you don't have to go through it later. Now, at the time, I didn't believe him. I just wanted to learn all the cool moves, all the weapons and all the cool martial arts like Kwai Chang King and the serious Kung Fu. So I was willing to go through this, pretty much abuse. If I did it to you as clients over this course of a week, I would wind up with a bunch of lawsuits. You just can't do it, right? You can't go through that process. So what happens is you go through the warrior phase, you develop the discipline, you develop basically the strength and focus, and you start to set a foundation. Now, a lot of us, especially unfortunately, this generation that we have going on now, those 8 to 33 are living a very sedentary virtual life. So when you're supposed to be setting your body, setting, how the muscles basically affect your bones and your vascular system, all of this is supposed to be kind of maxed out to sit and structure your future. You're just sitting in front of a computer with a 32-ounce or 64-ounce Slurpee. Yeah, and so a little note on that, biological age and life expectancy, this particular generation, I think the women, 83, something like that, to hit 80 without doing anything too special, that doesn't mean you're not going to die for the last 20 years of your life. We'll talk about that later. But to get to 80, okay, is probable. This next generation, it's about 58. We dropped, and I was told this 20 years ago by one of our, physicians, who's also one of our students, and he was explaining that we're going to lose a generation. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he showed me all the stats. Well, now, if you look at it, you'll see life expectancy is kind of plummeting here in the West based on our desire to sit and rot in front of a screen and live a virtual life. Now, when we were kids, we probably played flashlight tag and kick the can and all of that silly stuff. Well, they don't do that. They just sit in their room and rot in front of their computer. I know I've got a 14-year-old. And so this is what happens. So that you're going to pay for that. You're setting your body up. And the reason I'm explaining this is there's seasons. What you do in the spring actually does affect the quality of your harvest in the fall. They're really related. And we don't make that connection because we get kind of just lost. And during that early summer phase, that fire phase, you're, fire, look at me. This is what I can do. I'm flowering. I'm sexy. I'm everything. Haha. Yeah, but you don't. You don't stay like that forever, but you make decisions as if you would. But you pay for them for the rest of your life. This is a key piece. Now, I was lucky enough to be part of a complete cycle, and we're going to talk about this cycle and how we have a breakdown in the cycle. So during this early age, I was lucky enough to be influenced by somebody which I consider crazy old. These guys were and gals were in their 70s and 80s. They were ancient, right? Not really, but when you're early 20s and a teen, that's old. So to get that wisdom at that age kind of helped me save myself from just going off on this fire journey, okay? So fire, warrior, set yourself up. Then the sage period from 33 to 58 is like, okay, we taught you this thing called Qigong fist and all of these acupressure points. And, that's Oriental medicine. Oh, by the way, those acupressure points, if you hit heart one by shooting what they call fist up the sleeve with the Phoenix Eye fist, you're going to hit heart one. You're going to cause the heart to skip a beat and they'll drop dead. Right? Congratulations. And we were taught all of this. They call it Dragon's Touch. Well, that's how you're going to get a kid to remember acupressure points. That's the most effective way. Just give them a wooden man with all the points on it. And then it's just, you physically go through these points. Then it's revealed 7 years later, oh, by the way, these are all points designed to heal. Because a true master, as they would say, can cut two swords into one. Meaning it's harder to fix a bone than it is to break a bone. So you have to go from just the warrior stage now to the scholar that can actually fix the body and understand the energy. Well, that also goes from 33 to 58, your energy going up starts to level out now. That's called the earth phase in your life, the late summer. And it's primarily about, in our case, the acquisition of the mundane. So now this is when we do, if you didn't blow yourself out, right, in the 80s, or the 60s, now what you do is you work yourself to death because it's all about the acquisition of form, the mundane. And we really focus on it as if it is the meaning and purpose of life. So hey man, we got to get married. Let's get this house. Let's get these kids. Oh, we got college and we better save for a pool. And everything you do is just about stuff and gear. And what happens is you burn the candle at both ends and all of that good stuff. And you put yourself in this state of perpetual stress. Now we're designed as little creatures to, gather berries, chase down a rabbit, chill, oh, there's a tiger in the village. Get him, chill. And our nervous system is set up for that, to kind of like snap into, but generally chill. We don't. We go into this constant state of fight or flight where we're basically dumping stress hormones. And you'll do it beautifully from especially 33 to 58. It's a nonstop flood of cortisol, basically a death hormone. And this cortisol and a bunch of others, but we're not going to go into that, it's like a cocktail that creates inflammation. Simply put, this inflammation is going to express itself based on your physiology, because here's the good news. We're all dying of the same disease, but it presents itself based on our physiology, based on our constitution. So if you have a wood constitution, it's going to express itself in all of the wood, as they call them, syndromes, affecting the liver, affecting the eyes, inflammation. If you have a fire constitution, and we'll go into this in great detail, what are these constitutions and what are the syndromes that belong to the constitutions and how do they express themselves if you're off balance, okay? And so again, it's that same, however, what do we call it? Rat race kind of thing. So we all get put in the same environment, but again, based on that constitution, the presentation of syndrome will show up differently. So we all think we have different stuff. We do, but we're all suffering the same disease. That's something to think about. Step back and look at it from a very broad perspective, because then the good news is there's the same medicine. And the reason I say this, as I go through this journey in my life, warrior, then, scholar, wow, that's cool. I never knew. Oh, wow, that was doing this. And, I have one, we went through this. I went through this in a, not like a Western school environment. Some of you heard the story. I was more like, as my father would say, a cult environment. I lived in an anja, and otherwise known as an ashram, wearing a robe and no shoes. Now, I should have been a Chicago cop. So that's a big difference, So there was a lot of tension at the table when I was a kid. And so when I moved out and said, I'm not going to school to become a cop, I'm going to join a cult, and you have an Italian dad looking at you with his, gun on his side. But so anyways, I did go through that. And as I went through this process, I had kind of like let's look at the journey here. Let's look at what's really going on. And I started to see very consistent themes. There was like the same message with a million faces. And it was this message. It was like, lifestyle is our disease. And it's not a big adjustment at all. So one day, and I talk about this often, when I was with my grandmaster, and I opened one of these centers when I was 21. I was doing this at 21 professionally. Now I'm 90. No, that would be impressive, wouldn't it? You think about, and look, I can do the splits. So, so anyways, so we're sitting there, and this is how he rolled, because he knew the pursuit of the mundane triggers the poison, this crazy stress, and we are material addicts in the Western culture. So he's, I'm sitting there, he comes, I lived with him at night, but he'd show up and check your place out and make sure you were kind of staying within the quality that he expected. And so we're in the office and we're talking, and like a front room. And a guy, this is on Mass Avenue next to Harvard, in Boston. And he pulls up, technically Cambridge. He pulls up in a Bentley, and I'm all looking at that Bentley, looking right past him at the back. I couldn't get past the Bentley. And he looks, and he knows what I'm doing. And then we both look, and the guy gets out of the Bentley, and it must have taken him 10 minutes to get out of the Bentley. And he says, would you rather have the car or your body? And he said, he sacrificed himself for that car. And it took them another 10 minutes to get to the coffee shop. But it's like, so that you might be wealthy, but you're broken. Don't become wealthy and break yourself. No, what he would always say, no position, like you can be the president or a CEO, and no amount, you can be a gajillionaire, will recognize a neglected mind and body. And true wealth is what you are and not what you have. And so I would usually say, bullshit. I didn't believe it, So yeah, anyways, because I just wanted to learn the moves still. I wasn't really all into the thing with the stuff. It's hard to tell a kid when he can sleep on the floor, get up and do a double kick and then go to work, that one day you're not going to be healthy, or one day it's going to be hard to get off that floor. You don't see it. You're blinded by the season. Yeah. So I was lucky enough to have somebody who's already been through the season stand there and influence us, which is exactly, by the way, I'm segueing now, I'm jumping into winter, what we don't do in this culture. So the wisdom, the sage of the elder, we hide. We don't have the elder around the generation that needs it most. In Oriental medicine, water, which is the elder, feeds wood. And so that's how it should be. The beginning individuals should really be supported by and constantly under the wisdom and guidance of the elders. But we hide them in Sun City. Okay? And that's kind of what we do. And then the children who need it most, well, their parents are right in the middle. They're not there. And again, in Oriental medicine, it's the grandparent that takes care of the child. And I'll go through that whole 5-element theory, later. So we cut that. And so each generation starts over again. Each generation has to kind of figure it out, almost like we're a species with amnesia, because we have broken from the natural elemental cycle, or the season, how these little clocks work together. So as you're going through life, and now I'm starting to see, okay, yeah, you're right. This is interesting. So it's not just about stuff. And he made it a point. You owned nothing. I had a robe, one of those silly, it looked like a Jedi kind of robe, a robe and a robe. And you weren't even allowed to call it your uniform or robe. It was the uniform or robe you wore in an effort to completely break you of identifying with things. And it was a weird experience. It was a tough experience. But ultimately, what it did is it created space between identifying my stuff with me. Now, at the time, I just thought it was a form of proving I really wanted to learn, and maybe some type of punishment or torture. But as time went on, it took me time to get out of that season to realize what happened. So now I move on forward, and here I am actually in Arizona now, and I'm teaching still, martial and a lot of the, medical. And we actually have headquarters. We're training all kinds of people. And I got really good real estate opportunity in Sun City. So I bought the building and I'm like, yeah, this is great. Well, now the seniors, to my horror, start showing up. Okay. And so I'm sitting there, right? I guess this is it. I'm running my whole operation. I've got my attorneys. I've got my accountants. I've got my thing. I got all my teachers coming in from all over the place. I'm training people. I'm on it, And here it is. The door opens. I remember the day clearly. What's the genesis of this situation? It's midday, right? I've done all the work, trained all the teachers, and the door opens. It must have taken, again, 5 minutes for it to open. And in walks Stan Braff is his name. And he's got severe kyphosis. I don't know what was going on. It took me he suffered a stroke, maybe 10 years earlier. And so here he's coming through the hallway, and the sun's behind him, so it's kind of like Quasimodo. I just saw, a silhouette. I'm like, what the hell is this? And he's, hey, yeah, do you teach seniors? He's from New York. He was an old, he wired the trade centers, some old dude. I'm like, now I had a million answers, snappy little answers. I teach how to dig a grave. I had all kinds of things I wanted to say. So when I'm sitting there, and now my teacher explained to me, there's like a rule, principle. If in fact someone does ask in earnest and with sincerity, and you can really see they have issue, then you have to honor that, because that's compassion. So I says, absolutely, all the time, with a real thin lip. And he says, oh, outstanding. And he sits down. He's ready to talk about this process. I'm like, okay. And so it wasn't a month, 2 months, and there's 50 of them every damn day. And so I'm like, okay, this is interesting. They're all over 55. They're all destroyed. Okay, it is, like the night of the living dead. They're just coming in with what's left of them. Like, oh my God. Now I've spent, the last 20 years training, top level martial arts, military, guys you can grab by the throat and the groin, throw across the room, and they stand up like that. And this has been my life, And so it's like, oh, okay. And so, all right, there was a good opportunity for me to now open up compassion of the sage. The sage is, someone who can see the suffering of others, but see yourself in their suffering. It's, can you look at them? The yogis say namaste, the God in me recognizes the God in you. So I'm going to see me now in this. So it was a big test. It's like, okay. And then once you start to get to see the people, they show up, there's a lot of juice. There's like a lot of, the bodies aren't really all that, put together, but the energy is strong. So it's like, all right, so just start dealing with the energy here. And so it's like, all right, I have work to do. So I get busy doing a research to put together a protocol because, should I treat them individually? You can't. I couldn't needle each person, and it's just horrible. 1-2 people at a time. They're sitting on the thing passively waiting to be healed. It's not going to work. So it's like, let's put together a protocol that could address the common problem. Oh, the disease that's killing all of us. So that's where the genesis of the Journey Around the Sun and its contents really was created. And that was, dealing with this concept. Okay, so this is killing all of us. I put it together. I'm kind of experimenting with these people. Some of them are still here, the original people. It's amazing. And it's like, okay, I put together this, I'm doing all my research, I'm on the phone, I'm talking to my grandmasters, I'm reaching out. And so then I even go to China. That's why that picture's there. I went up that mountain, that's Huashan, okay? That's Flower Mountain. That is the gate. That is the monastery at the bottom, a seminary, technically. And then you go up, it's a 9,000-foot mountain, and it's, okay, here's the first temple, Chinkaping. This is where they do music, and you can learn the effects of the vibration of music, use the flute, oh, here's a I Ching. Oh, here's calligraphy. Here's Tai Chi. Here's medicine. You get to the top, and you'll see it in my book. There's hermit caves where all the elders live now. And these aren't like Fred Flintstone caves. These are amazing caves. They're 20 feet high, surrounded with books. One book is basically priceless. Where are you going to get it? And they hang there. And all of the people that live there, the kids, go up that mountain for advice from the elders daily, bring them the resources. And it's really an intense thing. So, okay, all right, I'm going to go to the mountain. I'm not going to gamble and guess, and I'm going to ask everybody that has, expertise, what would they do with this demographic in these numbers? Here's my idea. I brought my, my protocols and showed them, and they all say the same thing. They all said the same thing because I went to 3 different mountains, okay? I spent, the summer there. I went, okay. And they all said, fire falls, water rises. Then they give you the, and that's it. It's like, okay, and that's it. Because the theory is, if you don't understand that principle, you shouldn't be asking the damn question and get off my mountain. Okay? It's kind of how it is, because the whole thing has been put together. Really, it's kind of an alchemy, Taoist alchemists. They created the gunpowder and all of these things, And that's also how they protected their information, or IP, intellectual property, by coding it in alchemical terms, which really makes sense. So it's like, if you weren't really part of a lineage and properly initiated, you won't know what the hell I'm talking about. And I don't have to worry then about you stealing. Interesting thing. So what that is images 64 and 63. Now, some of us have been here for a while, right? And so you've already been churched, if you will. What is image 64? Does anyone know? Is that backwards? No, it's not. Because she knows. She's like, dude, you did it back. No. Do you know what this is? Anybody? She's just, yeah, that's what happens when your wife is in the room. She's, okay. She'll correct me later. Image 64. Please, come on. They're that good. Fire over water, right? And what does that mean? What is that? It's after completion, before completion. Before completion. That's right. Image number 63. Number 6. It's weird. You think it would end the other way, but they end with hope. They flip it back over to life. Does that make any sense? So, okay. Oh, I'm speaking in code, but you know it. Those of you that know. This is an old book. Has anybody ever heard of the I Ching? Okay, it's an old book. And so this book talks about the journey around the sun. It's about a journey. One, basically a pauper, a basic, peasant that becomes a king, or a king that becomes a peasant based on the choice of the quality of the lines. It's all about wisdom. It's not really an oracle. Could be used as one, but it's really about, hey, this is 4,000 years of life experience. Why figure it out yourself? Experience is a waste of time. Don't waste your time. Use this info. So the whole story, the end of the story is the answer they gave me, and that is mixing Kan and Li. Now, again, I'm speaking in riddles for those of you that are just getting started. But once you go through this journey around the sun, you'll know this information. At least you'll be initiated in the first year. It takes about, I'm not going to lie to you, 7 years. So that literally your cells divide, and reproduce new ones, and you grow into it. It becomes you. We're not going to teach you per se as much as you're going to transform. If you come to me and you say, man, I'm really hungry. As a matter of fact, I think I'm malnourished. And I said, well, let's teach you about nutrition. And I'm talking to you about nutrition. You're going to starve to death during the lecture. So we don't really teach you about nutrition. We feed you as we teach you about nutrition. So we can't just intellectually explain this stuff to you. You have to basically go through it, and start to understand it and like eat it to be it. Yeah. So this information will all basically make more and more sense as you take your journeys around the sun. Going back to the cure for the universal disease. Okay. Again, we are all suffering the same disease. You can argue the disease is mortality, right? You can say that. But the problem is, as we look at these journeys around the sun and we look at these different phases in life, during the springtime, 0 to 8, you formed your ego. You were a sprout. You were capable of anything. You can roll, you can jump, you can scream, it's just anything. You're learning your language, your gender, your culture. You're just this little soft, malleable sprout. From 8 to 33 was your fire period. Look at me. This is what I'm going to be. I'm so sexy. Anything can happen. Upward energy. Then it starts to level out. 33 to 58, we start to level out. And that leveling, in some ways, is a very good thing, but often it's unconscious. And usually it's just surrounded by the acquisition of the mundane. Again, your career, your house, your kids, your stuff. You're working 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, 7 days a week. And what's happening is fire above water. In other words, because of this incessive push, it's like you're constantly in that village being attacked by a tiger and, fire and bandits. We're not designed to run in a constant state of just, triggering basically the sympathetic nervous system, okay, and dumping all of these chemicals. We're just not designed. So it puts you into this like allostatic state or load of cortisol, where in other words, you're in a constant state of inflammation. And you're doing this for 25 years. Now, you get away with it for the first 10 because you're running off that juice from the early summer. You can kind of abuse yourself still, and that's what happens. But I tell you, you pay for your sins at 50. There's just no more tolerance. And because of this constant burning, again, we are designed to, in a couple of situations, fight or flight, we're going to survive, but it's not really. The man-made world in which we've created is so far off the Tao, if you will, the natural order of things. It's put us into a state of, as we call it, the rat race. But what that really does is put you in this perpetual state of fight or flight and stress. And as we said, based on your constitution, it's going to express itself differently. So we all look like we're suffering different conditions, but it's really, syndrome of that specific element brought on by the same disease. So I believe just seeing that is a big part of the cure. So now I'm starting to work with, as I'm telling you my little journey, and I'm dealing with my clients now 65 to 95, putting together this program, trying to reverse the effects of having fire above and water below for decades. Fire above and water below. What does that mean now? Let me flesh that out a little bit. So fire meaning literally, like in Oriental medicine, they're talking about all these fire syndromes. You know, blazing fire of the heart and blazing fire of the liver and blazing where, you know, again, based on your constitution, it might be bridal headaches, you know, massive migraines because you're a very wood type person and your eyes you're losing them, you know, and now it's affecting your liver and now the eyes are yellow and it's just you burning yourself out and it's showing up in all things wood. And you've done it now for decades. Any bad habit for more than 7 years is going to root nicely into your body. It's just like a good habit. So now, this person, yeah, they're doing it. They're running. They've got the 3 different jobs and they're Earth Constitution and they basically sedating the earth. They're trying to support it. Lots of sugar, because that's what they do. Sweet. Pancreas is gone. First, the body mass is just gone. You know, it's just, oh my God, you're mostly fat and your muscle mass is just gone. And your pancreas is, look at your blood sugar. You're not going to do that. You're not going to do that and hit 70. You just don't. You see, so we create these habits, really they're survival methods that seem to be in the moment, you know, okay, I got to do it. Yeah, but in an effort to succeed, you're killing yourself. And you're not just killing yourself like, you know, seppuku, kill yourself and sit there and honor. No, you're dying for 20 years. It's not pretty. It's like a real slow motion train wreck. Okay, that everyone gets to watch and pay for. Okay, because don't get me into the cost of this. Because you don't die like that unless, fire people do if they're lucky. Because they tend to pop. Okay, so that's fire, you know, massive stroke or heart attack, pop. Okay, well, at least you died right there. Better off. So based on your constitution is going to determine. How about, what is it? They think mostly women get it, but it's not true. What is that? I forget. It's wow. What? No, that's good. So, okay. Yes. Well, that has nothing to do with choices. It escapes me. It's a chronic state of inflammation and pain. What? Fibromyalgia. Yes. Menopause is actually a good one. The loss of we'll talk about that later. Actually, you can balance that. The effects is you're getting hot flashes. You're too hot. No, you're not too hot. You're not cold enough. The yin kidney isn't supporting the yang fire, so it's just yang fire standing alone, and so you're getting all these hot flashes. That's a different story. You know, you can be, you're going to experience that. That's how God did it. Thank Him when you get there, or her, or it. So, anyway, so the inflammation, all of these herpetic things, shingles, and all of these things, that's just stress. Stress, never being turned off and expressing itself. You know, once it gets, because see, not only are you adding this fire, but you're depleting the water. In other words, you're destroying your Wei Qi field, your immune system. The immune system is just being taxed, not by disease, exogenous pathogen, but by internal, like your mindset, what's going on. You're burning up all of the guards at your gates, and you aren't even being attacked from the outside. You're attacking yourself from the inside. So all your defenses, you're actually running around sabotaging. And then slight exogenous, pathogen, slight external, boom, you got nothing. You have no resources to fight it. So when we say the fire above, the fire is going to show up, again, based on your constitution in a myriad of ways. Now, water below, and again, the fire above does tend to express itself fiery with a wood, earth, metal constitution, or wood, fire, metal constitution. Water below, meaning, so your head's hot, right? Your face is red, heart beats hot, high, your blood pressure is all blown out, you're popping pills, and you haven't shit in a week. So that's water below. All of this is stopped. It's damp, it's cold. Your legs are all puffy, your feet are kind of blue. Digestion, elimination, procreation, all drop. It's damp, cold, phlegm. So it's backwards. You're trying to create this, flow, trying to make coffee, if you will. How about that? You got the coffee pot here and the fire above it. It's not going to work. It's got to go like that. You have to put fire below, water above. So the universal, and that's what they were talking about on the mountain, it's like if this protocol adheres to shifting Kan-en-Li, fire and water, now you have a shot. Now you're going to reset the body. And so what you need to do is all things that will bring heat to the feet and moisture to the mouth. Does that not sound too simple? It's really simple. But even the mind to stop and do that. How do we do it? How we sit, seated meditation, how we stand, standing practices, and how we move. Jing, Qi, and Shan, once again, all designed to get the feet warm, hands pink, mouth moist. Water also is all your, of course, interstitial fluid, cerebral spinal fluids. So again, a big part of the protocol is mixing. Okay, what do I mean by that? Getting the body to start to properly mix, getting the water to rise and the fire to fall is a big product of correct breath and movement. We sit too much. We worry too much. We don't move enough. We think too much. And so you have all this energy up here, flaming, and everything's just dropping right here. And so what we need to do, and what the protocol is all based on, it all begins with this drawing right here, and that is mixing. This is image 64, image 63, as we talked about, means nothing, but believe it or not, one day you'll read it. And that's, again, fire above the water, right? And then this is water above the fire. And we have to mix these triangles. Now, during your energetic anatomy and physiology, it's like, guess what, guys? You didn't read the manual. So if I, remember the Bentley we talked about? I bring you this current Bentley, high-tech, amazing vehicle, and I drop it off, and you just jump in. You don't even read how to take care of the vehicle. Or, even a device. You got to probably read it. A good grill, you got to read it. So we never actually take the time to read the manual. So, of course, you're going to misuse the device. In this case, it happens to be your hardware, your body, and your software, the way your mind works. So to go back and say, okay, let's understand basic energetic, physiology, energetic, anatomy. Let's try to understand how the body works. Now, in traditional Chinese medicine, and that's the approach we're using, they break it down really simple into yin and yang, back to fire and water, so that they can address this universal disease of Kan-en-Li being in the wrong spot. And so according to this, you have fire and you have water. And you have fire is all the hand, moving, assembling, all things in the hand are considered yang. So we do a lot of work to actually keep the arms. You'll notice when we do Tai Chi, the arms are relaxed and the lower body flexes. That's why sedate this fire by relaxing, not going like this, relaxing. And that's going to affect, in this case, the heart, the lungs, small intestine, the pericardium, triple wormhole, all of the yang, yeah? And the lower body is all yin. That's going to affect wood, earth, and water. These are elements, which in this case is going to be liver, kidney, spleen. Now the earth, that's the fountain of youth. Literally, all the deepest source, all the deepest substance in the body, the actual building material, not the activating of it, but the actual source is in this fountain of youth, which is this triangle. This triangle happens to be accessed if you were to lay on a table, we'd needle points in the legs and feet, but primarily Jingwell points would be on the toes, liver and spleen on the toes. Ball of the foot underneath would be the kidneys. Who said that? And that's when they're learning too much. And then the bladder on the pinky toes, right? And so you'll notice the first thing we taught you was that. Activate the big toe, the little toe, the ball of the foot. All I'm trying to do, as opposed to laying you there and needling you for 20 minutes, is getting you to expand and contract, basically get the chi to arrive manually as opposed to passively, actively, much more effective. That's the very beginning of getting this whole thing to start. That's the well. And as I'm moving this, I'm all the little muscles in the feet, and now I'm starting to move the spine. You'll know, right? How many times have you heard me say hip, waist, arms? Hip, waist, arms, for good reason. I'm trying to get this to happen. Because if I'm moving the feet, pushing the big toe, the little toe, activating the small muscles in the feet, arching the back, rolling the tailbone under, there's a lot happening. Because once I get to the waist, as I'm moving that spinal, in this case, sacrum, lower lumbar, if you can move the spinal column, you'll move the spinal cord. If you move the spinal cord, you'll propel cerebrospinal fluid. If you propel cerebrospinal fluid, bathes the brain. God assumed we were going to pick berries and run after things, not rot in our El Dorado, for 4 hours on the way to work. And so what's going on is the water, if you will, is not being properly circulated. The concept of even just going like this, I'm activating the, 3 hearts, the calves, moving the blood to the heart, but also activating the lymphatic system, getting that lymph fluid moving, and basically up to the lungs and out. So we basically, it's kind of like a pool. Most of us have pools out here, and you never turn the pump on, and, you get these, what are they, habuds, they call them now, dust storms. You get all this dust just sitting on the bottom of this pool. And the pump is your lymph system. Unfortunately, you've got to do something. If you're just sitting there, it's not on. You got to move. Oh, by the way, and if you move too fast, it's not on. Perfect movement, perfect level, again, like you're gathering berries. Now all of a sudden the pump clicks on. So a lot of the work by moving the lymph, by moving the internal fluids, is really how we get rid of the fire. Yeah, because the cellular waste is unbelievably, there's a tremendous amount of, let's say, inflammation brought on by that. We must get that out of the body. So a lot of the work that we're doing, and by, because what we do is you'll sit there like this on the phone. No, Frank, he said he'd send the contract. All of this is like this. Meanwhile, your lower body's all like that. It's so opposite. Your lower body should be making a fist, and your upper body should be chilled. Now I'm bringing literally heat to my feet, flexing all of this, relaxing that. And I don't know why, but instinctively we do the exact opposite thing. Like for decades at your desk, buy, sell, what are you doing to yourself? And so that creates this problem. So we need to take this fire, right, and this water, and we need to take the fire, bring it down, and the water, bring it up, and that creates this system here. The way we deal with the 6 and 5 element theory, and how you'll learn all of this. We're going to go into this in great detail this week. Okay, some of the mechanics behind this, but I think if at least we know that there's a theory there. I'm not saying, listen, guys, we're all going to feel the chi, and we're going to be better now. I can feel it in the room. It can't be that, because your situation is far greater than a let's feel good chi talk. Okay, there's going to be no chi healing here today. You're going to have to understand it and do it. Welcome to Zen Wellness. Screw you, get your own chi. Okay, that's one of our pleasant slogans. And so I got a lot of them. I got a whole book of them. So, but the idea is empower you, feed yourself, know what the ingredients are, and know how to assemble it. But we need to know the big picture first. And the simpler, that big picture is, that's my job, that's my main message, is to create a very simple big picture. Get the heat in your feet. Get this cool. And I go on and on, because when you're done, you'll notice we spend a lot of time. Inhale, tongue on the roof of the mouth. Exhale, drop the tongue. Inhale. What? It's just cheating and tricking your body into thinking you're eating. Now you're going to salivate. If you see someone, especially here, you go to the bank and they're just standing there. breathing out of their mouth with their lower body all blown out, and they're still tight because they're holding their little money deposit. They're all, I was like, what the hell is that? How are you doing this? And that's 20 years like that. If your mouth is open and you're breathing, basically you're drying yourself out. You're hydrating. If you have any concerns about inflammation of the upper body, stop breathing out of your mouth unless you're talking or singing or playing the flute or something. Shut your mouth, breathe through your nose. It'll also help with heat, external heat. Don't breathe through your mouth. Breathe through your nose. Tongue on the roof of your mouth, drop the tongue. Yeah. How quickly you salivate is a real quick indication of what's going on with the rising fire. It should take 3 breaths to have a mouthful of saliva that you can swallow 3 times and audibly hear. Glop, glop, glop. Okay, and now you know that hydration, that system's running. It should take 3 of these to get the hands pink and the feet warm. It should take 2.5 minutes to do 1 breath. Inhale. So these are little tests that we can look at to see how far down the road you are. And we're not talking about it, we're going to do it. But at first, I have to create here's the basic message, everybody. This is the goal. And that is, within this journey around the sun, over the course of the year, these little guys here, all of these components, are basically observed 10 weeks at a time. It's 5 elements, 5 seasons. We spend 10 weeks. We talk about, hey, look, these are all the things that we need to be aware of. Right now, we're coming out of spring. So spring protocol, we talk about all things liver, all things gallbladder, all things eyes, all things, and we work on everything that belongs to that element so that you're not trying to eat the whole cow for breakfast. My teacher taught me organically. We weren't forced to remember it. We just lived it to the point where it became you. You're not in, college, where you're going to pass an exam and never think about it again. We want you to become this. So the goal is to expose you to this naturally, seasonally, over the course of your first year is really an initiation. And then from there, some of the terminology will start to make sense. But I'm hoping the general principle, the main objective, should resonate. Because again, that recovering from 33 to 58 is all about restoring the damage we did chasing the dream. From 58 to 83 is really, funny enough, is when most of our clients show up. And that is the fall, that is the alchemist, that is metal, and that is the period in which you have to cut away everything that is not you and does not serve you. Because if you don't, it's what kills you. All of these habits, all of these beliefs. In Oriental medicine, metal belongs to lungs, skin, large intestine. These are all things we remove waste with. And this is the time to remove the waste, or it kind of becomes you. And so it's like having the ability to be the alchemist to turn lead into gold. This is a key piece. And now we're going to learn more about ourselves. We did what we had to do in the world of mundane to gather the resources to create, in theory, a sanctuary. That's what you're supposed to do all this for. I got all my stuff. For what? You're not bringing it with you. You should be using it then to create an environment conducive to tranquility and clarity so you can establish a relationship with the constant before death. It's hard to do that, though, if you haven't figured out the world of mundane. It's like a chicken before the egg. Because I see some people are like, especially when I live in Hawaii, I call them spiritual vagrants. You know what I mean? Full-grown men wearing a sarong and a full beard. I'm like, that's a dress, dude. No, it's all like spirituality, and I'm really not about form. I'm like, no, you're full of shit. Burn $1 million in a garbage can first and tell me you're not about form. You have to go through this world to leave it behind. You can't just be, I'm beyond that, man. I'm not about that stuff. Yeah, no, there is a period in which you must gather your nest so you can make the egg. But we think that we forget about we're gathering the nest to make the egg. Well, what's the egg? Ultimately, the egg is a relationship with the constant. It's always been you. It's always been now. That becomes a very big concern as we get later in life. Everything else changed. You look in the mirror, you've changed. The only thing that remains the same is the observer in the moment. So it's really then creating the information, the resources, and the environment to basically understand, okay, I can create enough tranquility here to establish enough clarity to see that one glimpse of who I really am. It's a good idea to do before death. That's the objective. So it's ultimately, you know, going through that phase. That's what we call the sage. It is that clarity and that wisdom, though, that's priceless, because that affects the children and the next generation, because then they see the wise sage standing like a mountain, moving like a river, and speaking from a place of wisdom. We don't have it. We start over and over. We got Miley Cyrus twerking. That's what we've got. And it's a sin. And so you're, you know, an example or a warning. So not only does that affect your way out, but that affects their way up. Very important piece, because it ultimately affects your peace. In other words, your inner peace. What is the quality of now? How much stuff is going on in your head? How long can you just sit there without anything compelling you, any type of nervous energy? How satisfied can you be now? That's really wealth. You know, amongst master instructors, one of the key things we look for is pensiveness. If you're all, then this, you missed. You might know a bunch of stuff and you can do a bunch of moves and you know points and you got some things and a gold coin, but you missed. Mastery is basically in the moment. And so it's time, sure. If you're not in a coma, you should be able to jump up with two swords and rock and roll if you have to, and go from extreme, yeah, to anyways. You know, mastery is really the distance between upset and reset. You know, it's like how quickly can you find that center and go back home, which is basically that tranquility and clarity. So it takes a certain amount of resources and it takes a certain amount of mundane, but at a certain point, you have to realize all that is there to provide you with an opportunity to basically find that. You know what? You don't die and go to hell. You bring hell with you. And you don't die and go to heaven. You bring heaven with you. Why die before you get there? So create it now. It's a trajectory. It's not going to change magically. And so the objective here is, in our system, they call it, you know, become an immortal. That so doesn't work in this culture. Like even the phrase is kind of weird. So what do they mean? Taoist immortal sage lives every day until they die. That's what they're talking about. Mentally, physically, and emotionally. The average American dies for 20 years. It's very expensive. They say it was like $270,000 average in copay. Just copay. And so it's like, okay, the quality of life is based on the moment, you know, how well you move, how comfortable. We just finished a study with Dartmouth on this protocol that we put together. And we wanted to see, you know, from a Western medicine standpoint, not just me giving you a bunch of fairy talk, can we actually look at this, do a study, and see if it works? And so we did it in a few different locations across the country just to get a good, you know, diverse view. And it was met with great success. Only after 12 weeks, it was more than a 25% increase in stability and mobility and grace. Get up and go, tug test, all kinds of things, you know, like walking with groceries, looking at something and identifying it. Yeah, the ability, one of the quickest indications of your biological age is this. That's it. I mean, I know it's not sexy. Get up and down. Get up and down. How easily can you go from high to low? That's quick indication. So no matter what you have, you can only enjoy it, you know, based on that degree of mobility. It's really important to develop and maintain that mobility is a Jing expression. Then the next step, of course, you look at tranquility. So this is what we're looking at. At a certain point, it does become your, after 58, I don't care what you're into, who you are, and what you own, your body doesn't care. Doesn't care. Now it goes back to you. There's a book, I recommend all of you read it. How much time do I have? 10:01. So what time does this end? I don't even know. It ends at about 4. Ends at 4. This ends at 4. Okay, so there, 10:15. Okay, all right. Another one with all the answers over there. So a book called Younger Next Year. I recommend reading it. Great book. Don't necessarily agree with how he gets there, but I love the medical study that he does to support it. You know, Younger Next Year. And basically the fact is, as a person, you know, the older we get, the more energy you got to put into your body. I'm gonna paraphrase the whole thing for you. It's like this: 0 to 33. Remember, you have real simple. Now I'm not getting technical. Remodeling guys building your body, right? And then you got demolition guys cleaning up the mess. You ever do any remodeling? There's always a mess. Okay, well, say you've got 5 remodeling guys. I get it. And then a couple of demo guys come up to pick up the stuff. Well, by the time you get about 50, you've got 5 demolition and 3 remodeling guys. By the time you get to 58, 60, you know, you got more like 7 demos and 2 really nervous remodeling guys. Okay, and so you as far as building the body, no, it's all about taking it down now. Oh, okay. How then do we get the body to continue to remodel? You've got to basically do a thing called strategic trauma. You got to break the body down mindfully and trigger the release. Manually push the button. You got to call them up. All right, guys, we got some remodeling over here. I just did these low stances during my Tai Chi form, and my thighs feel like, oh my God. And now the remodeling guys show up because you called them. The older you get, the more time. After about 58, it's, believe it or not, 4 hours a day. 4 hours a day of physical activity. That becomes your part-time job. I remember I told my brother Rick that. He got pissed. Oh, I worked my whole life. God damn it. What are you talking about? 4 hours a day working out. Who does that? You know what I look like? Like, all right, dude. You know, it's like, you asked. You know, I'm not morbidly obese. So, you know, so, okay, you think you have a choice. You don't. And if you don't do it, you'll pay. And this is in me. Read the book. Blame the Guy. I don't even know his author. It's great, though. I love it. I was all, I love this. Because believe it or not, after about 58, that is your part-time job. Isn't that kind of depressing? That's why you had to work all that time. So you had the resources to take care of yourself for the rest of the time. No one told us. We thought, you know, once we get our little retirement condo, we're good. You're not. So you have to keep moving. And you have to keep also not just moving physically, but the concept of developing mentally, the concept of growing and staying inspired. Cognitive health is a big one. Challenging the brain, constantly growing. And that's why right side, left side, simultaneously, opposite directions. How about this form? How about that form? As soon as you learn a form to your horror, I've got another one for you that you can't do. Because I don't care if you learn the form. I'm just going to keep giving you these Rubik's Cube puzzles. The form is a detail. You think, now I've got it, I'm done. You're not done. You know, if you never get it, don't care. You're working. I've got a million forms. You're not going to get me. You're going to keep doing it. And so but it's really about keeping you engaged, working the brain, working the body, staying inspired so you can stay in the moment. So that when you hit that, you know, 58 to 83, you've got a whole new process. It's refining and recovering, restoring everything you did to yourself. From 83 to 108, you have a whole new purpose. And that is, again, you're an example or a warning. And hopefully just your very existence, just your frequency has an effect on, especially, again, the next generation. They have to see, you know, that there's more than just the early summer. And they have to see a bigger definition of success, because we're just, if you have stuff, you're successful. Now, we know that that's not the case after certain, but you do need stuff to sustain yourself. So there's a balance. So that's what the whole journey around the sun paradigm is about. This is the message. Is it pretty clear? I've got to, my hope is to make a very simple, clear message. Have you ever heard of the phrase Napoleon's idiot? Really? It's a good one, isn't it? He was smart. So what he would do is he'd always promote the dumbest guy in the ranks to be an officer right next to him. You know, his uniform didn't even fit. You know, it's like, okay, there's Bert. And what he would do is his battle plan, his mission, his command, he'd explain it to Bert. And if Bert can explain it back to him, he knew everybody knew it. The key to leadership and mission is to have one message so simple that even Napoleon's idiot gets it. And then he'd actually have Napoleon's idiot tell him, hey, this is how it is. If he can explain it and understand it, everyone gets it, and they will win. So when it comes to messaging, It all boils down to water over fire. Kahn and Lee. Cool head, hot feet. You know, a very simple indication. And every time we're done with our little Qigong class, your feet are warm, your hands are pink, your mouth is moist. That's an outward expression that you did it. You know, so we can actually see it. In the speed in which you can do that, get the Qi to arrive, is really a quick indication. So that's basically it in a nutshell. Does anyone have any questions? I've got 5 minutes. Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about how dementia fits into it?
Ooh, that's a good one because there's so many other influences, you know, because I can go into, you know, vaccination and. Okay, the question was dementia. How do you, you know, what is this and how do you, there's so many indications, so many factors. You know, I've got some theories on vaccination that I won't get into, but I will talk about also diet, way too much sugar. Okay, but atrophy, staying physically active, that other piece that I put in with the brain. You know, we talk about Parkinson's and we're talking about plaque on the brain. We're talking about decades of an inflamed brain, basically suffocating the brain for decades. So basically reducing the size of the brain, which it's supposed to reduce by 10% every night when you sleep. It doesn't. It hasn't since the 80s. So then you have to mindfully do it with regulated breath and meditation so that you can basically get this, do some brainwashing, wash the brain. Okay, so cooling the brain, bathing the brain, then challenging it. Right side, left side, simultaneously, opposite direction, you know, brushing your teeth with your left hand, all kinds of, keep it fire to wire. Neuroplasticity is a fact and it does work. But if you just sit there and you know where the light switch is and you do the same thing every day, the lightning storm in your head gets smaller and smaller. That's the very grossly simplified. You know, because there's a few factors, but one, you know, that's probably one of the most basic. Okay. Yes.
Ricky online asked, "Is this fire that equals inflammation? Sounds like autoimmune syndrome." So
that's correct. He nailed it. Yes, autoimmune syndrome. Yes, thank you. You know, cortisol, stress hormones, everything's. That's if you bioage. Indication of age is inflammation. You take a look at inflammation, and I'll tell you aging, inflammation. And then there's, you know, external, internal, you know, pathogen. If the system itself breaks down from constant stress, you know, then exogenous pathogen enters the body. That's why shingles, herpes, all of that stuff, boom, it's in. Once it's in, it's in. I think I was in 4th grade, and I can tell you my life story. It didn't make Oliver Twist look like a party. It was hell. Okay. I mean, really it is. I mean, but who cares? It's your story. You let it go. But it was so bad that the stress, you know, and the life, I had such a blown out immune system that by the time I was covered in herpes. And back then they didn't know, would he have a girlfriend? I'm in 5th grade. What do you have a girlfriend? What kind of doctor is that with a cigarette in his mouth? You know, this is, you know, 1974. So, really? So anyways, I'm dealing with clowns. And so I spent a lot of time dealing with that. And there was a, you know, back when I was little, it was embarrassing. Your face is just covered in these boils. And my dad didn't know. You know, he was just, screw it, kid. You'd grab a napkin and just squeeze them. Yeah, here you go. You're good. Get to school and you almost pass out in pain. And so there you go. That's the nurturing we all deserve. And so not until I started training, my teacher explained, he says, you know, what that is your Wei Qi field. You know, he gave me certain things to eat, but it's, you got to build up your bowl, meaning your Wei Qi field, your immune system. It's hiding in your spine. It rests. As soon as the door opens, it runs free. And so I had to rebuild my nervous system. And then the use of moxibustion, the use of cultivating CV4, all of this now, I don't get it. I might, because the process is so painful. Once a year, we do a moxa protocol, and I'm always, you know, cheating. Maybe we can use cones, yeah, because it's a horrible process. So the times I cheat, if I go under a great stress, I will feel it. It'll itch. So I know there's, you know, it's at the door. Then I'm like, shit, next year, because you can only do it once a year. I do the protocol the hard way, and then I'm good. But I know right away, I can feel inflammation in my body, in my eye, in my mouth, if I don't basically maintain my Wei Qi field. Because it's there. It's never going to go away. It's there. And so you got to know your body and know how to work it. Otherwise, by the time I get older, I'm just going to be covered, shingles, everything. It'll be a disaster. So, but it also tells me, it's like a barometer saying, hey, dude, you're doing too much. You're taking this too seriously. This relationship is you're not holding your space correctly. I've learned to use it as a kind of a gauge. My Wei Qi fuel drops, inflammation kicks in. But I started that study in 74. I had to deal with that. So it's very real, and you can do something about it. Yes. Okay, let's do them online. Who cares about these guys? Yeah. They're in the room.
You guys first. If there's no other questions, I'll read these ones off. They're asking about how to treat like lower extremity polyneuropathy and like nerve damage in the feet.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. First step, we have to do general treatment. Push your damn big toe. Drop into your heel. Push your big toe. Drop into your heel. What's going on? Do you have edema? What do we got? We got to first start. What is neuropathy, right? It's like stripping a wire. You basically burnt the myelin off the nerves, right? Simply put, we know this. And so why is that? Well, we're kind of bathing them in highly acidic interstitial fluid. This isn't good. We got to get this battery acid out of the legs. So first step is move. Okay, that's the first step. Then we can start to learn, okay, there's acupressure points that we can do to help stimulate the movement of the nervous energy. Next, the nervous system. The next you can use, now you'd need to, like advanced, you'd need to understand the use of Moxa, because Moxa is excellent for the nervous system. So, but there is no quick. But the first step, Golden Chi Ball protocol, create a baseline and then see where you're at in a year from now. And then you can kind of extrapolate the results and see, okay, I'm moving forward. But it probably didn't happen. Yes, sir. Yes. Okay, non-physical ailments. This is great. That's a great question. Okay, so let's look. Simple is best, okay? So there's death shows up on 3 horsemen, right? They say 4. First is exogenous pathogen. Something gets you really sick and you die. External. Second, though, is internal, emotion. Because the emotion is a disease brought on from the inside's reaction to the external environment. So if you deal with a high stress, high competition, high intense, you're going to start to feel the stress emotionally. You're going to act out emotionally. And then finally, it'll actually express itself physically. It'll work its way from the outside or the inside out. Exogenous will actually work its way from the outside. Oh, I'm sick. I've been sick so long, I broke my spirit. Your spirit can break the body can break the spirit. Now, the same elements belong to different emotions, which again, based on your constitution, will be your go-to emotion. So if you're like wood, then it's rage. If you're earth, then it's going to be worry. If it's, fire, it's going to be excessive, you know what I mean? Hyper. If it's, water, it's fear. So you have your go-to emotion because that's what you coped with. You don't even know it. It's involuntary. It's called po-intelligence. So firstly, knowing, oh, geez, this is my natural emotion. Now, that emotion has been so damn long that it's stored. It's in your cells, cellular memory. So the lightest thing triggers an over-exaggeration of that emotion. It becomes your go-to poison. And then it slowly kills you. So we use a combination, standing practices to burn the nervous system to overcome the impulse of the emotion. And then healing sounds to remove the cellular memory of the emotion. And then a moving practice to quiet the mind so neither are triggered. Does that make sense? Then the third one is a chicken truck. So you can get hit by a truck. You can basically, emotion, poison yourself with your emotions or your environment. Those are the 3. Yep. Was there any other questions on the thing? Anybody else? Does that give you some ideas? Did we learn something? Hopefully you'll show up, you come away with something new. Well, I appreciate you spending the time. Yay.